Hi. Before we get started, just want to let you know that we recorded this episode on religion before the papal conclave met and selected Cardinal Robert Prevost to be the next leader of the Catholic Church. So unfortunately, no talk about Pope Leo XIV, but a lot of conversation about spirituality and faith and what God means to us. So back to the episode. Do you ever thank someone or something when you first wake up in the morning? All right, well, take out your leganias first. But afterward, is there a moment of reflection where you maybe address a higher being and say something to the effect of, thanks, whoever, for giving me another day of life? For me, a former altar boy, that's God, or Diosito, which, how could it not be? The Mexican culture I grew up in is synonymous with Catholicism. Just look at how we talk. Ay, Dios mío. Si Dios quiere. Gracias a Dios. Diosito is everywhere. Now, if you don't believe in that God or even a God, hey, no te preocupes. There is zero judgment on my part, which as a Catholic doesn't come easy. But you know what else doesn't come easy? Trying to convince young people, especially other Latinos, that God and his old school fan clubs are worthy of their time. Because as time passes and society pushes forward, younger generations are increasingly identifying weaknesses in organized religion. Take the Catholic Church, for instance. It wants us to believe that queer folks, particularly transgender people, should apologize for their supposed sinful existence, which, no, thank you. It also refuses to let women become clergy or assume positions of power within the institution, despite a critical priest shortage. And don't even get me started on the ongoing abuse scandal. Some will say that Christian institutions are publicly hurting God's image, so much so that it's pushing people away. Others will say that organized religion just isn't relevant anymore. So, simply put, who or what should we believe in? I'm Xorje Olivares, and I'm eager to ask this question. Is God still relevant to us? This is Hyphenación, where conversation and cultura meet. So, joining me today are two people with very different relationships to religion than myself, but we all grew up Catholic. And since we grew up Catholic, I'm dying to figure out the last time they went to church. So, joining me first is Hoja Lopez, a comedian and writer who pretty much spent her entire academic career in Venezuela going to Catholic school, which all the power to you, and now identifies as like a spiritually fluid person. So, Hoja, thank you for joining us. And secondly, when was the last time you found yourself in church?
You have truly stumped me with this question. I was trying to rack my brain. I think the last time I went to a very fancy white lady and man wedding in New Orleans, and there was it was like one of those grand ones that has like a giant organ in the back and like sort of expansive ceilings. And I'll tell you what, the Catholics, we really do churches right. It was so big. It was so amazing. This was probably like 2017. I stood outside of a church 2 years ago waiting for my mom to come out, and my mom was sort of like beckoning me in, and I said, "I'm good. I'm good. I'll stay out here. I'll wait for you." But that yeah, there's something about a church, the grander it is. I don't know if they're trying to maybe bamboozle you a little bit to feel the sort of, grandiosity of God, the bigger the church is, but, there is something about like a beautiful stained glass that makes you feel like there's something bigger going on.
That there's a chorus of angels just singing, bringing you inside its doors, very Sister Act style.
100% greatest movie ever made, by the
It
way.
is the
Number
best
two.
movie.
There's something every Latino I've ever spoken to is obsessed with Sister Act. Like in Spanish, we say cambio de hábito, by the way, which means change
Yes!
of habit, which would have been
Change of
such a
habits.
good title for the film, anyways.
It is.
Mhm.
Well, I don't know if he's a Sister Act fan, but excited to welcome Luis Galilei, who is an actor, filmmaker, and a performer who grew up Catholic, but pretty early on rejected a lot of its teachings, is now very much a follower of Andean spirituality. And so I'm curious for you, Luis, when was the last time you were inside of a church?
Well, I had to look it up. because I wanted to put some cultural context here. The last time I was in a church, teach me how to Dougie dropped.
Whoa.
Whoa, okay.
2010, baby, when I was 15, dog. That's the last time I
Nice.
stepped in there.
I'll just chime in and say that for me, it was just to make my mother Margie happy. It was the Saturday before Easter this year,
Nice.
before Pope Francis left us. I must have known. My body was drawing me to church in order to give my tocayo one last hurrah. Well, thank you so much for joining me today to have this conversation about religion. And I figured the best way to begin is for us to bow our heads in prayer. So if you will join, no, I'm just playing.
Oh,
Could
okay.
you
I
imagine
was
if we
ready.
just, like, had an impromptu prayer session? Just, like,
What would you pray
staring.
about?
All right.
What would we pray about? I feel like I would pray for, I'm just always praying for safety. Like, the world is a chaotic place. I just want to make sure that I can step out the door and not be worried. Hoja, do you have something that you would immediately pray for?
Oh God, it's probably not that benevolent. I would say the last time that I sat down because I considered this prayer and went, I really want this, like I hope I get this. It's a
Mm,
hope is a prayer for me now. But
I like that.
I was it was like I was gonna go up on a stand-up show or something, doing Spanish stand-up for maybe like the third time. And I had worked really hard, and there's nothing more disappointing than doing the very best that you can and still failing. That's always the hardest part. So I was like, oh, please let this effort like go well. So I think that was maybe what I would pray about. Some stupid fucking stand-up show.
Hey, that's warranted.
Rather than the state of the world, Jorge, probably not. You're
Well,
coming in. You're
I
coming
don't
in.
know if I said this stated. It was a very selfish thing. It was like, make sure that I'm safe. Like that if when I walk out the door, I don't have anything to be worried about. But maybe the world too. Luis, was there something that you would immediately, if we did have a prayer circle right now, is there something you would pray for?
Yeah. I'm like way more in a woo way. Like I always pray, like the advice that I've gotten from people that like pray to Pachamama, which is the Andean Mother Earth. Like it's to be specific, right? Be very specific in what you want, and Mother Earth will grant it to you in the way that she feels it should come, right? So like, but when you said that, I was like, I pray that the men in this country, somewhere along the way, God is giving them the obstacles in their path so that they could make better decisions.
Amen. See, this impromptu prayer session is exactly what we needed to start our day.
Little cracker.
Persínate, be ready. So I love that we've talked about, we did talk about Catholicism, but mostly this idea of growing up. And Hoja, you even said that the last time you were outside of a church was waiting for your mother. So there is this notion that family is the genesis of our understanding. Oh my God, Genesis, look at what I did there. Of our understanding of religion. So Hoja, could you talk about what your family's association with religion was, especially maybe Catholicism?
Sure. So, I grew up with a very religious grandma and great grandma. They were people who were like waking up at 5 a.m. every day, rosary. Like they would do the little the whip yourself on your thigh stuff, like really hardcore Opus Dei crazy. Yeah, it was like I think Venezuela, part of it is like my great grandma grew up in like campos, and it's just like very rural settings where the real unifying factor was religion there. And so my mom was really like kind of the first rebel of the family. I feel like there's always a rebel. So I got to be a second generation rebel.
Hey.
My mom, this is just reminding me, I recently had this thing recently, a couple years ago. I called my mom and I was like, Mom, I remember you in a copper pyramid in the middle of the living room. And my mom's like, I see me. I was just praying. I was meditating in the middle of the copper pyramid. This woman is so not Catholic anymore, that she had my stepdad build her a copper pyramid that she would sit in and she would meditate, because my mom's very like woo woo now. So now it's a real kind of like combination for her of coming back to Catholicism as an older woman, but still holding like this very broad set of beliefs.
Wow.
But yeah, for her, it's a real mix. But yeah, my grandma and my great grandma were very fervent. I have part of the things that like have been passed down to me from my family are all very like religious objects or Catholic objects that now hold a lot of meaning in my life. Because it's my family, but not inherently because they're religious sort of objects. So
I see that.
yeah.
Luis, who would you say is the most religious person in your family when you think about religion, like at a Catholic level, Christian level, this like church going figure?
Yeah, I never had someone in my family that was like a very much a church going figure. For me, like the Catholicism was just like it was a part of our upbringing, it was a part of our life. Everything had to do with it except for going to church. Once I started to become of age, I guess, like my mom started to get like really enthused with getting me in Sunday school classes and working on my first communion. Like all my family has done all the like communion and confirmation thing, uh, and that's where it stopped. And then like sometimes they go to church very like now that they're older they go because I think they're starting to feel their mortality. So they're like let me pray to something bigger, and I'm like, oh, it's very interesting how you guys go now.
Mm-hmm.
God's been watching the whole time, girl.
Did y'all do catechism school? Did y'all do catechism school? Like you went through the full, I call it like a prep course, LSAT, but except for we're
Yeah,
like what, 8 years old? I imagine it's
yeah,
like very similar to like the studying that you have to do for your bat mitzvah. Like you have to learn so many things.
yeah.
I remember catechism as like it's so effective. Like the Bible and the stories of it, it really got in my head. I still have, like I still sort of operate on a daily basis, even though I don't inherently like speak that language based
Mhm.
on those stories.
Oh,
Oh my God.
the fact that in catechism that I acted out the prodigal son parable at least 5 times in my childhood. Like I was the son that came back and was like, my son, you've been gone for so long. Thank you. I don't know why we did that all the time. Like just to, I guess, make us feel badly for choices that we were going to make as adults.
Probably, yeah.
But yeah, we would do it. We would have class right before mass. So it was like a 3-hour extravaganza
Yeah,
between
dude. Ugh,
going to
So long.
school
I
and
hated
learning
it.
all of our commandments, sacraments, and whatever you have you, and then go to mass and somehow be coherent by lunchtime.
I think I just made a realization on why I don't fuck with Catholicism just now on this pod, because you were
Oh,
talking about acting out that thing and like you were the son, and like I didn't grow up with my dad. Like my dad was out of my life and he chose to be out of my life. And like this whole religion is about somebody's son. And I'm like, that guy, where's he at?
Oh
Uh,
dang!
because I don't know if that's like real, but like maybe I was like, whoa, I feel a little like I felt like a little vulnerable right there when you said that. And I was like, wait, I wonder if as a little kid, like I was just like this whole son father thing, like really just I didn't believe in it because it wasn't granted for me. So I was like, why? I don't understand this. And it's funny you were talking about this, and I was like, I questioned it from the get.
I wasn't like a kid that like knew how to, beat to the rhythm of my own drum. I was such a little follower as a kid. The only reason that I like that I went to catechism school really was I really thought it was all real. Like, and I wasn't really into the judgment. I liked the magic of it. I liked the
Mm,
stories of it. Like I liked the sort of in some way I didn't really have like a super present dad in my life either, but
mm.
there were a lot of other stories that I really sort of like identified with, and I loved all the virgins crying blood, the drama,
The drama.
and
Oh my
It
the
is a
goodness.
very
drama.
dramatic religion.
It is so dramatic, Jesus.
So dramatic. Jesus.
Hold on, we'll cut.
Yeah.
The spirit has overcome me so much so that I almost knocked my microphone off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to talk about, because as Luis mentioned, there is a very gendered approach to Catholicism where it is father, son, the Pope, you got cardinals, all of whom are male identified, which I feel like we do have to bring up the Pope, since Pope Francis unfortunately has now left us. And there's a lot of response to his passing, particularly from those who felt like he was pushing the church in a very progressive, welcoming direction. But I'm curious, either Luis or Hoja, did any family members of yours have a like profound reaction to the Pope's passing?
I'm not for me. No. Again, my family's very selectively religious.
My WhatsApp was on fire, you guys. My WhatsApp was off the change. My Aunt
Prayer hands,
Lillian,
prayer hands,
prayer
prayer
hands.
hands.
My Aunt Lillian was going off. She sort of, I know things are bad whenever I start to get different groups, like like sort of splinter off from the main family group, and each one of them is their own. Like, I can't believe this happened or whatever. Like, I do have pretty religious family members, and they have um a really deep reaction to the Pope dying, and at the same time the Venezuelan relationship with the Pope is very tense. It's very interesting because as soon as the Pope gets into political stuff, which there's so many things going on in Venezuela with like Chavez and Maduro and the Pope, like essentially there's like a rift between Venezuelan people who are very anti Maduro, but Catholic. And so my family was really divided, I feel, whenever the news came out. It's so interesting. Like, as soon as religion sort of like starts weaving into politics, people can really, it really affects people's lives. Like, I think for my family, it's been kind of, not everybody, but for a lot of them, having those things separate is really important, because they really lost a lot of faith in the Pope after that stuff happened, even though, I don't know. Uh, I've found them to have a really close relationship to this man who they've never met before in their lives.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like we're using a lot of different words that I think are part of this spiritual faith umbrella. And I love that, Luis, when I introduced you, we talked about Andean spiritual beliefs, that's more of where you're headed in. Can you
Mhm.
explain what that means for folks who are just learning about this for the first time?
Yeah, so I guess I wanted to call them like Andean spiritual beliefs because there was so many there was the Incan Empire, and then there was so many peoples, different tribes that were like conquered by them, that had their own sort of versions of what would be considered like the Incan religion. But essentially it's praying to the earth. Pachamama's the earth. Then we have Inti, which is the sun god, the Mamaquilla, which is the moon, and there's many different Quechua names for the different aspects of earth that you pray to. And I myself, in my own therapeutic spiritual journey, have felt very far away from my own self, right? Through conditioning and all that stuff, like from, the inner child that we talk about. So I started to pray in different ways, and I started to find gratitude in many different places. Like, the Andean sort of spirituality has made me so much, has helped me achieve a peace throughout the day that I haven't been able to in other forms. But I have seen, people who follow Catholicism do, but like I can see Pachamama everywhere. Like, she talks to me in the way the earth talks to all humans. So like, I've learned, and I know this is super woo woo, and I do
I'm
not look
here
like
for it.
the type of
I
person
love it.
that does this, but like, I'll choose to walk home so that I can absorb her. And if I'm not feeling well, like, I will literally hug a tree. Like, I will literally touch a tree, and like, I've just seen that throughout all the cultures in this world, there's been a common denominator, and it's the earth, praying to the earth.
I definitely feel similarly. I don't necessarily pray to earth, but I have a lot of like, um I find truly religion in like really small things. Like, I find it in my day-to-day life, my rituals, my sort of congregation with my friends, the way that I sort of like think about my neighborhood feels very like intensely spiritual to me, like knowledge of my neighbors, understanding the soil that grows in my backyard so I know how to garden in it. Like I
Mm,
find a lot of sort of like of my spirituality in appreciation for small things that are around me and in
yeah.
the way that I speak to my friends. Like I truly am like, how do I want to show up for the people in my life? That feels to me like a set of rules and a value system that I try to live by.
I love that each of you have said this because I think it's putting into perspective how I've evolved as a Catholic being. This idea that I always imagined God as a singular presence, that there was this outwardly omnipresent, omni something being. Never know which word to use, but like that there's somebody all knowing out there that is particularly serving as an arbiter. That there is a level of judgment of the things that I do, the things that I don't do, the moral, I don't know, just the moral ambiguities that I find myself in and whether or not I'm doing it to please a larger person. And now, kind of like what Oha's saying, it is in the deeds. It is in the little things around us. It is in the choices that we make, the people that we choose to surround ourselves in, that is where the beauty of God can be found, as opposed to this notion of, holy shit, I did something wrong and now somebody's going to come after me and I'm, condemned to all,
Yeah.
eternal hell, which I feel like is one of the things that people have beef with the church. This idea that it's so rooted in, oh my God, fire and brimstone, and we're all, Sodom and Gomorrah, whatever it is. So I'm curious, Hoja, if there's something that you can particularly identify that means that shows that you have maybe a little bit of beef with the Catholic Church.
Yeah. I mean, I've been I've actually been thinking a lot about and drum roll the devil and evil. And
Mhm.
there is something that I'm a person who really tries to see the good in all people, and it's just a part of like my makeup. So I do have a lot of compassion for people. But there is one thing that I really struggle to have compassion for, and I think that the church has a lot of that, which is a hypocrisy. As I've said, there's a part of me that really is about value alignment. Like that is really how I want to live my life. And oftentimes, when I see the sort of judgment that comes down from the fire and brimstone stuff, I really think to myself, these people are not living the way that they're preaching. And that hypocrisy is at the core of my beef. Um, because if you really are aligned with your value system and you're an evil motherfucker, then there's something there that I can pinpoint as, okay, well, that's evil. But that's not a single human to me on planet Earth is really like that. I think there is good and bad to everyone. And so for me, I think the piece of like, of not doing something that you're judging other people for doing, it really gets my freaking goat.
Luis, do you have a similar beef? Is that where most of
Yeah.
your gripes came from?
Yeah, I just like the hypocrisy has to be the biggest thing, and we could probably talk about that for the entire episode, right? Like, this notion of like, that this religion is here to guide people to some sort of saving, like why does someone need to be saved? How much of that saving is taking away their self sovereignty, right? They're taking away their own ability to deal with things that have to be dealt with and not leave so much up to God or the church, right? Like I've found that like I don't love that the religion, it's almost like it's always between you and God. And like it doesn't promote you talking to your community about things because nothing is more knowing than God. So how can I like some things are just for God to judge me with. The hypocrisy of the church, the las iglesias, these massive things, these expensive things. I mean, you see them in South America and Central America, and you see them here. And these people profiting off of it, and now into the age of like, there's the like, Joel Osteen is one of the richest people I've seen talk about God, and there's just my aside from the hypocrisy, like my biggest beef with it is the way I see it is used as a tool of oppression for lower income, en los campos type neighborhoods,
Mhm.
what in different countries and our country. I mean, the way it is so easily weaponized to divide people and make people move in certain ways. You can see how Christianity and the church was used in making America great again. Like they're trying to bring in Christian values back, whatever that may mean. I think it's just something. My biggest beef with it is that there's so much interpretation of it that it can be used in any way that people want.
I have a question for either of you, but like, do you remember a time where religion served you, like Catholicism or that initial sort of like foray into it was like made you feel something?
For about 6 or 7 years, I was a part of a gay Catholic church group in New York City.
That's
And
so
there was something
cool.
so beautiful about being able to, during the sign of peace, like hug other men, other gay men, and give them like the little kiss on the side of the cheek as part of the offering of peace. And I would never be able to do that in my hometown or in most other churches in the United States, well, pretty much in the world. So I feel like that really reminded me that community in church, community with God, especially with other people who share this identity, is part of that magic you were talking about a little bit earlier. So I'll
Yeah.
say that that's probably my positive interaction.
My positive interaction is gold jewelry. That shit was lit.
What?
Yeah, dog. Just the
Explain
gold
further, my
crosses.
friend.
The
Oh
gold
yeah,
crosses, like every time you did something, like first communion, I got my first gold cross, and I was like, "Whoa, this is lit!" Like I'm gonna wear it everywhere. Like especially for Latinos, like I don't know, that gold jewelry thing is almost like, oh shit, like I'm out here now, and I
Mhm.
love that. I love the like we said, like I love the drama of it all. Like every time, whenever I see like a church scene or anything like with the church, I love the architecture. I love the stained glass. I love the drama. I love the story. But I will say the most meaningful, positive thing that I've had with that is becoming my little cousin's godfather. I was like, this, I
Mm-hmm.
was just like, I feel him. He's in the room. You know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
he's giving me the opportunity to be a father figure. Again, I have a lot to do with like my absent father, like with my traumas and everything. So like I was like, this is incredible. And even though I don't believe in you, even though I don't believe in the practice that we're doing here, I believe in you and I like accept this responsibility through your hands. Like I felt like very divinely charged. I was like, okay, like this is my commitment and I love that there's a word for it. I love that I get to be a father. Like, you know what I mean? Like I get to
Padrino is a very gay term. Padrino,
yeah, yeah,
it's adding sort of like a little flair at the end of padre, you
I
know?
love the I
yeah.
love the little hand. It's like padrino.
Padrino. Tiki, 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 tiki.
Wait, Oha, do you have a positive moment?
In Venezuela, we have a big mix of like Santeria and Catholicism, and those things really kind of weave interchangeably. And so we have a lot of really amazing, like female figures as kind of heads of church. You know, so much of the American kind of Catholicism and baptism is so sort of Jesus focused, but in Latin
Mhm.
American countries, we're so focused on Las Virgenes, and they really take this sort of almost uh godlike like aspects to themselves. And in Venezuela we have La Virgen de Coromoto, the Chiquinquirá, La Virgen Maria, but we also have this woman called Maria Leonza. And Maria Leonza was in Venezuela the very sort of like phrase between indigenous culture and Catholicism. And Maria Leonza is this very like muscular, gorgeous, like almost like witch figure that is like mainstream in Venezuela. And I just remember her being the first woman that I ever saw that wasn't like thin, that wasn't frail, that wasn't white. And so to me, it was kind of like queerness in her. I saw a lot of like otherness in her that I really identified with. And Maria Leonce has always been something that like accompanies me in my life now. There's this really beautiful statue of her in downtown Caracas, and she's on a Dante. So it's those very strange creatures that have common, almost like a hormiguero, like an anteater face.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the size of a bull almost, and she has her hands
Whoa.
up and she's holding this beautiful like wreath, and she's nude, and that's just not something that you necessarily see in Catholicism, but it's a major figure in Venezuelan religion. And I don't know, there's something about the women that I grew up thinking of as powerful and lovable and idolizable and look up toable, if that's a word. But
I just made it up.
that is part of my favorite thing of Latino Catholicism in particular, is that we really deify and give importance to the women that are mothers, and to the women that sort of like came before us. And I think that's something that you don't always see in other kinds of Catholicism.
So, like any good Catholic boy growing up in the Texas-Mexico border, my family and I raised money so that way I could go to World Youth Day back in 2005. And if you don't know what World Youth Day is, it's intense. It is a time where you send essentially millions of children to a specific place in the world for a pilgrimage, and it ends with a papal mass. So my family and I have been selling like chicken fajita plates in order to raise enough money to send me to Germany so I can go see Pope Benedict in Cologne, Germany, now 20 years ago. And I distinctly remember that part of this pilgrimage is we had to go to confession. And so they just lined up and corralled all these children into some parish in Germany. And because at the time I already knew I was gay, had not really told many folks in my life, I thought I needed to confess it, that I needed to confess to this stranger priest that I was living with this truth. And when I go up to this priest, again, somebody whose name, face, I could not even describe to you, I remember sitting and saying, as I'm listing out my sins, that I was gay. And he looked at me and he said, you don't need to say that here. And not that it was a part of him saying like, don't mention this in church. It was this is not to be included in the list of things that you have to ask for forgiveness for. And that stuck with me all these years later, and so much so
Wow.
that I never felt, one, that I had to confess that I was gay ever again, or two, that I ever needed to hide the fact that Diosito made a choice for me to be gay, and I could live as openly and proudly as I wanted to as a Catholic person who also was of a queer experience. So I want to start with you, Hoja, about recognizing if your queerness could coexist with your beliefs, or if there was a bit of tension that you had to work through in order to get to that spot.
Yeah, I don't think there was a ton of tension for me personally. I kind of like, as I mentioned, my mom was meditating in brass pyramids when I was growing up. So she sort of was a very pragmatic woman. I didn't think that she was ever going to have a real problem with me being a lesbian or me being gay. And so I guess the thing for me was really like my grandparents. I feel like I came out to, I sort of actually tested the waters first with my grandma, and I was like, wouldn't it be crazy if, how crazy would it be if, would it be crazy if I was a lesbian or like was gay or something? I don't know why I sound like an old timey, like an old timey bartender, but, but I definitely was testing the waters. I was at a Baby Barnaby's in Houston, Texas, and she was visiting me. And I remember her kind of saying like her first word was something like ew, and it was such a throwaway little line, but it really kind of sets you back a little bit whenever you test the waters and it doesn't go that well, and my mom for so many years was like, don't tell her, just, it's gonna kill her. I don't know why they always think that coming out is gonna kill the old people.
First
It
response most people have is like, no, please, we want her to live a healthy life. Why wouldn't she?
Why wouldn't she? She gets to know her grand person a lot
Mhm.
better. I finally did come out to my grandma, and I think it was a very sort of like soft okayness. I think that they really care for me and they don't want to alienate me. So there was not fire and brimstone then, but it was really lovely because she did come to my wedding, to my wife Rachel, and that was a really lovely moment because it's a backyard wedding. I unfortunately, while I love observing drama, I'm not a very dramatic person myself, at least.
That'll be
Um,
removed.
just a chill 35-person wedding was as about as much as I could handle. But she brought me this little San Juan, like the religious sort of like thing that I was telling you that I kind of carry around. It's this little figurine that I had in my room in her house growing up, and it was just something that I'd always like had in my life since I was a child. It's just this figurine in this room. I feel like a lot of people can identify with like going to your grandparents' house and notice like I've been looking at this thing for however old I am, you know? And when she brought it, I think it's like there's not a lot of conversations to be had about it anymore. It's just sort of this like, I accept you, I love you, like I'm here, you know? And she was grumpy because she's always fucking grumpy, but that was not what it was about, you know?
Oh, thank you for
Yeah.
sharing that. It's so
Yeah.
beautiful. Luis, is there something as you're now embarking on this form of spirituality, this Andean spirituality that you've talked about, praying to the earth and praying to the things around you, is it easy to see your queerness in that?
Yeah, I think my queer journey led me to it. Like, because of Catholic sort of the Catholic sort of marriage between this discipline, Catholicism, and machismo in the very toxic way from like our Latina communities. Like I never entertained like coming out. I was just like, oh, this is just like something that's in me that I don't necessarily like respond too much. So I was like an absolute no, because the men in my family wouldn't accept me, my friends wouldn't accept me, girls would look at me wrong, like everything was bad. But then I came into my queerness and I came out as bisexual to my friends and to other people. And then yeah, with this Andean spirituality, like there's no judgment on me and what I like or feel or attract to. There's only judgment on what I do to the earth. How am I behaving to my fellow person that came out of, you know, Lago Titicaca, right? Like we came out as clay figures out of this pond, this lake in Peru. So it's like that is more what I am judged on, right? Like than who I am as a person, I guess, through my sexuality.
I want to end with this last question, which is I want us to each describe visually what we envision God to look like.
I mean, this is just the first thing that came to mind, but um I think I see myself alone. Um I see myself like on a bench, and I'm fed. I'm not thirsty. I don't have any like need that needs to be fulfilled. And there's beautiful weather, and I feel the breeze on my face and in my hair, and I'm breathing deeply, and I don't even have to meditate on purpose. I don't have to think on purpose. I don't have to not think on purpose. I think it's just like when I'm being. When I'm just, there's literally no attempt, no reach, nothing. It's just sort of existing. And I have a lot of those moments in my life where I get to just kind of be.
That is so beautiful. I love that. Oh.
God, I want to copy that so bad. That's so much better. That's so
Dang it.
much
No
better.
one's listening.
That's so much better than what I was thinking.
What were you
Don't
thinking,
worry
Luis?
about it.
No, well, you said, what does God look like? And then I was like, I don't know. The sun came into my mind because, like, again, that's like like the Andean thing because it gives life to so much. But then I was like, all right, would it be some like, and then I was like, oh, Black trans Jesus. That's what
Mhm.
she looks like, and she's fabulous and she can vogue. But then I was like, no, come on, what is it? And I came down to like a voice, just like the voice in my head, not the bad voice, not that one, but the voice that like my intuition, I guess, like the voice that sends the signal to my stomach to go for something even though I'm nervous about it, the voice that sends the signal to my legs to get myself out of a situation because it just doesn't feel right, the voice that like comes in and also says like, you know, like, is this the way you want, like that holds the mirror up to me in certain situations, and like, is this, how do you want to act in this situation? Like, you know what you want to be in the example you want to be. Is this how that person would act? It's the voice in my head. It's the intuition that guides me without me asking for it. It just comes in and sort of drops a gem on me. And then of course it's my human ability to say yes to that intuition or no. But I think that's what God is. God's a voice.
Mm-hmm. And a Black trans woman, you said.
And a Black trans woman, yes.
Voguing.
Who can vogue?
Yes.
Who can vogue?
We're all on earth at a ball, right? We're all at a ball.
Ooh.
Yes.
The Catholic ball. I will say, one thing that I appreciate that somebody told me, especially in this gay Catholic group that I was a part of, is that God's pronoun is God. And so this understanding that there's a gender to him, her, they, that it's just God, and you have to appreciate God. And for me, I appreciate and I see God, you know, those hugs that you give people when you either you haven't seen them in a very long time, or you realize like, my God, I have so much love for you. Those like intense bear hugs. I feel like that is such a manifestation of God and God's love, and like being able to transfer whatever that energy is into an interaction with another person. I'm getting chills now just thinking about it. It's just like there's something so beautiful about.
If I could, I would give you both one of those hugs
I was
right
gonna
now.
say,
Look at that. I'm so lucky
I'd
because
get
I
in
got a
there.
chance to hug each of you. So I feel
I'd
like
sniff you both. I'd get in there. I'd take a big nose full of that.
I'll
see?
squeeze real tight.
Do some nice little squeeze exercises. Well, this has been such a fantastic conversation, not only about religion and queerness, but just being around two people who I love and admire so much and really make me think about my faith and think about how like this is very much an expression of the faith that I grew up with. And even though it might not look like the same one from catechism class, it's still all an act of love. So I cannot thank you enough for joining me for today's call.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for having me. And as my mom would say, que Dios me lo bendiga, me lo ampare, que los ángeles reconozcan tu camino y iluminen cada uno de tus pasos. Every time I leave the house, baby.
Oh,
every time.
That's so beautiful.
I love that. I love that. I love the little God Latin sayings that we have. Like,
It's
you know,
love. It's truly just love. Yeah.
Camina con Dios. And I'm like, yeah, you know, thank
Vaya
you.
con Dios.
I'll walk with that.
Just a lot of moving with God.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to let our listeners know that if you want to follow any one of my guests, just go to our show notes, all of their information, where you can see them on social, where you can possibly see them live, all of that will be there. And if you want to send us either your own experience with religion or a topic you'd like to have us cover on Hyphenación, just email us at hyp@kqed.org. But until then, go in peace.
Con Dios.
Con Dios.
Dios.